Learn how to build a better sign and print shop from a few crusty sign guys who've made more mistakes than they care to admit. Conversations and advice on pricing, sales, marketing, workflow, growth, and more. You're listening to the Better Sign Shop Podcast with your hosts, Peter Kourounis, Mike O'Reilly, and Bryant Gillespie.
Before we jump into the episode, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, GCI Digital Imaging, grand format printer to the trade. We talk a lot about outsourcing on the podcast and the importance of having good partners, and GCI Digital Imaging is a good partner to have. Owner TJ Bedacht and his team focus on providing killer customer service just the way grandmother used to make it. If you're interested in learning their approach to business, hop back into the archives to episode 9, where the guys and I interview TJ about customer experience. So if you're looking for a high quality trade printer for banners, wraps, and other printed graphics that your customers throw at you, check out GCI Digital Imaging at printgci.com. Welcome back to the next edition of the Better Sign Shop podcast. This one is a special episode. We have Jeff, the Viking Shermanator, back for round 2. It is late in the evening for us on the East Coast. Probably the latest podcast we've ever recorded. So no holds barred here. All bets are off. Are you ready to rumble? How was that? Was that a good intro or no?
8:15 p.m. Man,
That's
old.
My kids are probably at the door right outside right now. Like, what is Pop talking about? Anyway, as always, Michael, the sign design samurai.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, what else do we have? Wait. I've got some names. What do we have? Carrie sent us some names. Did I run through these with you?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah, she did. She did.
That's a good way to start these.
I like these.
All right.
Let's introduce him to him. Let's go.
All right. I don't think I sent these to you, Mike.
This is news to me.
Okay. All right. So
the anticipation is killing me.
I'm going to do each one of these, and then we could get like a crowd reaction. Number 1, Mike the Sign Swami.
Nice.
Okay. All right. I like the alliteration.
Magic Mike. Maybe we could add like Magic Sign Mike in there.
No, I'm down with Magic Mike. Actually, that name elsewhere.
Did anybody else just get a mental picture of Mike in a string bikini or G-string or something?
100%. 100%.
Oh God.
Red backwards baseball cap, shirtless, with a rag in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Absolutely.
All right. Number 3. Are we ready? Yeah.
Me too.
Hopefully my kids aren't listening in. All right. Number 3, the Art Adonis.
You said this is coming from Terry. That somebody's got a crush going, don't they?
Have I met
This is coming from. This is Carrie Brock. Oh, you weren't on that episode, were you? Darn.
No,
I missed
That was just Peter and I. All right. I can't even hardly say this one. Mike the Design Dragon, and then in parentheses she had, he's on fire.
Yes, that
I need
one
to meet
wins.
this person.
That one.
sure.
This is Carrie Brock, the last episode that just aired.
You're amazing.
She's famous. All right. And the last one is the Corel King, which has some truth to it.
It's got a ring to it, but I'm fond of Magic Mike.
How about we just do this, right? Let's just wrap this up. Magic Mike, the Corel King.
There it is.
I'll take it.
Boom. Put them together.
Yes.
Magic Mike, the Gorilla King. I mean,
Peter for the win.
that is the name.
There you go.
As much as I like the sign Shawami, that was
The sign Swami.
or whatever the heck that was. This one was
That one's
good.
hard to
It's
say.
delicious.
That one's hard to say. So, what are we doing on this episode, guys? Do we have any idea? I've got like 5 questions here, but Jeff, why don't you like bring us up to speed on the latest on you? When did we do the last podcast episode? Feels like forever ago.
November, or October, November, somewhere around there. It was right. It wasn't long after I got laid off, so it was October. I want to say late October. So yeah, I landed a gig with Sunset Signs in Anaheim, another smaller shop about the same size and staff and what have you, but we're pushing probably about 7 mil in revenue right now a year. They just recently started doing electrical signs within the last 5 years. So there's this big push. They went from being like a small sticker and banner company to being a full-fledged architectural sign shop. So there's a whole bunch of growing pains going on with that. And I am their first and only project manager as I sit here right now. One of the reasons they brought me in was because of my background in building teams and departments and stuff. So I'm actually, I have my first new hire starting on Monday. And theoretically, I could have another hire start as early as Friday of this week. I'm building that department already. When I got hired on, the thought was I'd be doing this in like August or September, but they had the biggest quarter they've had since I came on board. And so I think they're realizing that the days of having their sales reps double as project managers are numbered. And we're transitioning full-fledged over to the other model.
That's some insane revenue to not have any.
I was
managers at all.
right.
can't
I
even
was
imagine.
right there with you. I was right there with you, Mike. Like I'm thinking to myself, 6 million. He's
Yeah.
their project manager. They were a vinyl shop 5 years ago, and they migrated to electrical signs. I got so many questions. Let me know when I.
Yeah. I mean, so I will say, having only been there since January, I can give you what I can give you. You guys, you might want to reach. I can put you in contact with the GM, Eric, and get some more background if you guys want to. If you see a potential there as an interesting story, it definitely seems like it's got some meat to it.
Yeah. Well,
you
we've
guys.
got a lot of listeners that would like to make that jump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, he's not here tonight, and I want to talk to you. I have questions.
Sure.
For you.
I can.
Regarding a bunch of things. So.
Sure.
I'm gonna kick us off with the question that's been on my mind ever since this guest was on our show, and I'm gonna
This guest. Love it.
What would you like me to call him?
The Viking. The Viking.
Oh,
Viking.
come on! All right.
No.
Time out.
You're not. You can't speak for me. I was referring to another guest.
Cool.
I've had this on my mind. I've had this on my mind ever since we had a guest on who explained that she has a full-time trainer on her staff.
Oh wow.
Okay. Now, Jeff, you're an astute individual that's built teams before. I would love to hear your opinion on this because this was groundbreaking for me. What are your thoughts around hiring an individual whose core responsibility is to bring out every ounce of best practices and policies for each department and train and build people up? And that's the person that's on set. There's no customer interaction, right? Their job is to make sure that designers know how to design, production guys know how to produce, installers know how to install, they know how to communicate with one another, and they continue to bring people in that are completely green in this industry, no experience, and input them into a business that does, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what you said, but let's just say north of 10 million.
Sure.
What is your thought on that?
Well, number one, I'd say that's probably a good reason they're doing north of 10 mil. And I think we talked a little bit about that. Actually, we talked a lot about it the last time I was on, about turnover and how to keep and maintain employees and staff. Devoting somebody to that solely is something that could counteract that. I absolutely, I'm on board with the idea.
Have you ever seen that before? Have you ever seen that in shops
Not
or
not
heard
in
about it
not in
through
the sign
colleagues?
industry. I mean, I know you're kind of, I mean, you're kind of dipping into areas of what I would say, a lot of your consultants tend to be, where they'll dip in and do it. That's their focus. But again, it's in little segments. One of the things that poses an issue, and I have seen this and experienced it firsthand in going the consultant approach, is, or as opposed to going to the consultant approach, I should say, is that, okay, so you unearth these things in your investigation, your conversations with your trainees, and when you're talking about building departments and processes and making them better. A lot of that can be exhausting for the leadership of the company, to try to keep the momentum going and keep their support in that and back it. And it's one thing to say you want change and you want to improve, but it's another thing to constantly be approached with new ideas and new things that you have to digest and try to change. I think the consultants have the advantage of being able to put that into like more digestible chunks, so that it's a little more easy to maintain, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, than it being approached with it all the time. I could see having somebody full time on your staff being a benefit and a bit of a drain to that emotional energy and what have you that people put into their businesses, being owners or even managers, having to work with that. I could see that as being a double-edged sword from that perspective. But as far as like keeping your staff, the new staff, and building a team, I mean, trying to recruit into this industry has always been a nightmare. You know,
Yeah.
we don't. There's no real career path into the sign industry that I've ever really been able to identify. I mean, even in Southern California, there's one trade school out here I'm aware of that even touches on signage as part of its curriculum, right? So where do you end up getting people? You either end up poaching from other companies, or you get people that got let go from somewhere else, and let's face it, they got let go for a reason, probably. So yeah, what are your options? Really, you want to build a good team? Yeah, you need somebody who's going to train them, and that takes time. I mean, I was telling Bryant before you came on, I've got people that are going to be coming into my department in the next week, and my time available to do actual work on my projects is going to be massively impacted by that for several weeks at bare minimum. And that's unfortunately going to mean, to a certain extent, either taking away time from my projects and devoting it to those people, or pulling the old favorite of chuck them into the wolves and see how they fare, and at the potential expense of those hires and the other projects and jobs that they're going to be touching later on too. So pick where you're going to devote your time.
Oh, good. Yeah, good points. Good points. All right, so let's
Mm-hmm.
kind of pivot in a different direction. Okay, going way back to what you said earlier about going from a vinyl shop to a shop that's now getting into electrical signs. I have a client, one of my many clients that are going through a very similar path right now. I would say they
Mm-hmm.
are mostly a vinyl shop, and they are looking to get into this market because they want to swim in that pond. They want to basically be like every other sign
Mm-hmm.
company that is in their market, going into it completely green. So as their
Mm-hmm.
sign Yoda,
Mm-hmm.
There you
as,
go.
as their sign coach,
He's
I'm
flaunting the nickname,
walking
lording
them
it over
through.
you, Mike.
Yep, walking them through that. I mean, what would you say? I mean, we could talk on for hours on this, but what would you say is the path to doing that? What would you say is the is the road, the yellow brick road, if you will, of going from vinyl printing and plotting, laminating, weeding, masking, that in that environment, to, man, I'm going to get into like dimensional signage. I'm going to get into channel letters. I'm going to get into light fab, and then eventually get into fab. What would you say to an owner who's contemplating that path? How would you go about it?
Go ahead. Sorry. What did you say?
And I was just going to say, this doesn't necessarily, it's not a question necessarily directed at you, but if anybody else has an opinion, I'd love to hear it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll kick it off. I mean, for me, and it's with pretty much any kind of like change in business process. You know, I'd look to I'd look to the experts. I'd look to the network that you've got, whatever it might be, whether it's I'll plug you guys, if whether it's this podcast, whether it's the forums that you've got online where you're actually starting to build some sort of community where people are interacting. Start asking questions there of other experts and people that have been through this, and get some knowledge. I mean, you can hire somebody who knows how to build signs. Okay, great. That's one aspect of it. But then you've got to have somebody who can design them too. And designing for electrical signs is quite a bit more complex than it is designing for stickers and banners and digital print and that sort of stuff. Not trying to diminish that industry by any stretch of the imagination. You guys had TJ on. He's built a huge business out of that, serving that market. It's a large portion of where things are, but designing a dimensional fabricated sign that requires certain fasteners, has to satisfy wind loads, has to pass through building and engineering and all these sorts of things to, before you can even put it on the building, is a whole other ball of wax than designing flat media. Mike can attest. He reached out to me with something he was working on, just for some non-lit channels, I think they were, and we were talking a little bit about how to attach lettering to a glass curtain building. In the state of California, the requirements out here are a little bit different than they are up in Oregon. We've got seismic considerations down here that he doesn't have in his code up there. I mean, you could spend your entire life just trying to read and learn that stuff on your own, but you're never going to get the business off the ground if you take that approach with it. So, I mean, I guess if I were to map a path for you, I think you need to find yourself. I think order of operations. I think you need to find yourself a fabricator, or not. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Find yourself a designer first, because that's a harder portion to outsource. No offense meant, Mike. That's a harder portion to outsource starting off. I'm trying to save Mike from some more headache conversations too with shops that are trying to sell into this market without the knowledge. Trying to design into that is very, very difficult. But there are a lot more wholesale fabricators out in the market than there are wholesale designers, knowledgeable ones. So find yourself a designer, whether that means you've got to poach somebody from somewhere else or whatever, but get yourself a sign designer who, understands how to put technical drawings together. You could keep your design team you're working with for the pretty pictures, but you need a technical artist, either a design engineer or whatever you want to call them, that can work on that. Start off sending those off to other fabricators, get some feedback from those other shops as you start sourcing that stuff. And then eventually you can start looking into, next step would be to bring in a fabricator.
So you're talking bringing people first, designer, bring in some sort of fabricator, but you're not really bringing in any equipment yet. Not bringing in any.
I wouldn't just. I guess there's an assumption of something that would be needed at that point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, right around the time you're talking about a fabricator, you'd need a CNC. That's your.
Okay, so that's where you would start, right?
Yep.
You'd start there. So someone getting into fabrication, even in a small sense, you're essentially needing the two people that are capable of designing I would necessarily say mid to high grade types of signage.
Hmm.
Then you need a person that is capable of using their manos here,
Hmm.
right, and
Hmm.
using their hands and getting
Hmm.
that, and taking something from paper and bringing it to life, right? And
Hmm.
this is we're aligned there. We're aligned there. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, and this is I learned this. I did not learn this my first few years in fabricating. I was able to step away from the business for a while, look back into the business and say, okay, that is a key crack in the system where I'd like to fix. So that is the fabricator's input into how something should be made,
Hmm.
making suggestions to the designer.
Hmm.
So for years, my designer, whether it was someone I hired, myself, my business partner, whoever, we were all designers, would design for fabrication.
Hmm.
Okay. The fabricator would then have a different opinion on how this could be made based off of, like you mentioned, wind load, weight capacity, things that designers are not really going to think about unless they are Mike. Okay.
Right.
Unless
And
they are, you know, the Corel, what do we call him again? The Corel guru,
Magic Mike, the Corel King.
The Corel King. Okay,
Hmm.
unless you're the Corel King over here,
Hmm.
most designers, even seasoned designers, are not aware of those laws and regulations and things of that nature. So
Sure.
a potential crack here would be, here's how we're going to make it. It's being made, and it's actually being made wrong, right?
Hmm.
And it's because it's one directional information. So an area that I've been coaching on is really kind of making that a bi-directional two-way communication. Let the designer go to the fabricator and say, okay, this is what we got to make. Can we have like a brainstorm session?
Hmm.
How would we make this? All right.
Hmm.
As we all know, probably more than a half a dozen ways to make any type of sign.
Hmm.
Okay. Any type of sign. So getting that input and saying, yeah, there's actually a more, maybe this way has more material, maybe this way is less material, but more labor. Which one makes financial sense for us to go down that path? That's an actually, so I love what you said, that you got to bring people in, but those two people have to talk. Those two
Hmm.
people have to communicate in the design process. And then there's a level of, okay, well, this is what we discussed. This is what we agreed to. This is how it's going to be made. Who's making sure it's getting made that way, right?
Yep.
And that shouldn't come from the designer. That should come from maybe the owner or a department manager of some sort, maybe someone like yourself, Jeff. Like, this is what
Or
we agreed
yeah,
on.
A project
yeah. You
manager.
you've got me thinking further up the chain too. I'm thinking more the build it yourself model. There's another very viable option. Obviously, it's the chicken and egg thing. Do you start selling first and then figure out how to fulfill, or do you build yourself up the capability so that you're not selling out of an empty bucket, right? Maybe a project manager and or a knowledgeable salesperson who can, for a time period, serve as
A
that
dual
account
role.
manager, a dual
Yep.
role, is your first player to coordinate things, and with the design team, there's always that back and forth, and I think we talked about this, or maybe Mike talked about it on one of the other podcasts. The design for install is a big thing too. It's not just got to be fabricated. It's something that's got to be put up on a building or freestanding at some point too. That's something that's almost always left out of the equation. So,
It also has to be serviced and over time as well, which is
yeah.
something that a lot of people forget about.
So I mean, and going to my current practices right now, just as a benchmark for that. I mean, that's the whole point behind a kickoff meeting in my mind. We get those teams together. We get the stakeholders. We get somebody from production. We get somebody from install. We get the designer together, and we talk about that project. And everybody gets their opportunity before we even start putting mouse to mouse pad, for lack of a better way of putting it, for those initial designs. everybody gets their opportunity to say, hey, well, you need to consider this, you need to consider this. Hey, but okay, now, install suggests something, and then the fabricator goes, well, I can't do that because of this. And then you end up, working your way into a design that's buildable and installable by the team of individuals that you have. Because like you said, there's a dozen different ways to build anything. And one of the things that factors into why you choose those is not necessarily always cost. It's, these are my capabilities, right? Like the company that I worked for almost 20 years had different fab practices and capabilities than the company I'm working for now. I'm being told by my production team, we don't build channel letters with less than a 1-inch stroke on them because of X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
And I know from my experience prior that there are ways of doing, 3/4 and 1/2-inch stroke channels. It's just, knowing how that process works, and I'm looking at some process change there to kind of help them develop those abilities and those ways of doing things. But maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe the initial goal is, I want to sell a sign to a client. I'm going to sell them something I can build. And so you need to have that team to make those, to your point, to make those decisions for the company and kind of help mold what your practices and processes are.
Yeah.
I want to throw out like an alternate
Yes, please.
thought here.
Yeah.
I mean, like this talk of equipment and fabric, like, dude, I'm starting to sweat. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, this is it's like a serious commitment. Like, you've got, like, this is what you're absolutely 100% sure you want to do.
It is a serious commitment, but I think a lot of people fail to take into consideration how important the installation component of these types of jobs is.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thinks about, how am I going to sell this monument sign? How am I going to get this monument sign built? Without really thinking about how you're going to get the damn thing in the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as Jeff, as you said, I mean, they're good quality wholesale fabricators are a dime a dozen at this point. There are a lot of companies that you can outsource the fabrication component to. Finding a good quality installer who's going to show up on time with a professional looking crew, do a good job, and not steal your customer and not charge you through the nose for that installation is really, really difficult, if not nearly impossible in some markets.
Well, can I comment on that for a second? Because you
Go
said
for it.
something. You said something in that I think is interesting, and I think anybody who's looking at going into this maybe needs to set that aside for a moment, and that was, and not charge you through the nose. Growth costs money, number one, and it's going to be an expense to do it. And I would say, don't shortcut it and try to go with the cheapest guy, because you're going to get the cheapest guy, and you're going to have those situations where they're going to steal clients from you. You're going to look bad. You may pay a little bit more, and that may limit your sales potential. It may slow down your sales growth in that market segment, but that's probably a good thing in the long term, because you're going to learn more. You're going to get better valuable feedback. When I was talking about the outsource component before with the designer and your fabricators, one of the reasons I see that approach working is if you're working with a vendor who is going to give you feedback on your designs, or who has, maybe you find a vendor that you can send the pretty picture layout to, your concept, and then they give you the actual technical drawings back to approve and review. Sure, it might cost you a little more money, but then you're going to school at that point, right? That's your sign industry 101 training, and that's the value add and the extra money that you're paying to that vendor. Sorry, I
Totally.
I cut you off there.
No,
I
no,
apologize for that.
No.
You're totally right, and I think that's an important point that you made, because in this industry, I mean, we're always trying to earn the sale, and everybody's afraid of, you're always balancing cost versus what you're selling it for, what you're what you're going to profit on the job. So it's very tempting to take the low ball chuck in a truck bid for this channel letter installation, because you make you make a few more points on it than if you go with the high end sign company who's charging you twice as much, even though they're going to do it right and show up on time. I'm always wary about people that put all their eggs into the fabrication basket and none into the installation basket because it's such a huge component. I mean, it's half of the sign is the installation, right? It's not something you do at the end. It's a huge part of the entire project, if not the majority of it in some cases. So I think that shops should really put a lot of emphasis on learning how to install signs themselves and hire a good qualified installer, pick up a good used bucket truck that's not going to strand you on the highway. And a good installer with a lot of experience in the sign industry is going to be a great resource for your designer internally as well, as far as how to fabricate, what to think about and consider, from an installation standpoint, and all that can then be collaborated with the third party wholesale fabricator. But having your installer game working like clockwork, I think is a huge hurdle to overcome that a lot of shops don't consider when they want to dip their toe into this end of the pool, and then they're caught with their pants down, when push comes to shove, because they don't have a good installer they can lean on, and the install can make or break any job. So I think it's important that they put some some focus on that.
It's kind of like a lot of the clients that we sell to, right? Like, hey, we're putting in a new restaurant downtown, and then the sign is like like, oh hell, we're opening in 2 months, we don't have a sign. Like,
Right.
what are we gonna do?
We're always the last people anybody ever remembers. That yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But when you start out doing like fabricated signs and electrical signs, I mean, chances are pretty good you're going to do basic rectangular cabinet signs, maybe wall mounted, maybe with a basic pull skirt. You're going to do some channel letter signs, either remote mounted or raceway mounted, basic stuff, right? It doesn't require a whole lot of technical know-how from a sales or design standpoint. It requires some, but not a ton. But the installation side of those, I mean, even a basic raceway mounted set of channel letters can absolutely ruin your day if there's a beam behind that wall that you didn't think about, didn't know that was there when you go to install it. So there's a lot to think about. Initially doing those types of signs, they're really easy to outsource to a wholesaler without a whole lot of headache. And as Jeff said, any good wholesaler is going to work with you and give you feedback. A lot of them do give, will give you the shop drawings you need, and you put together permit drawings. A lot of my clients have vendors that do that for them, no charge, just as part of the job. So it kind of bridges that gap. And like Jeff said, use those and learn from them, study those drawings and understand exactly what what goes into making these signs and how they're installed. But yeah, don't discount the installation side of things, because that's so critical, and that's where I've seen so many shops really stumble and fall, because they didn't expect installation to be that big of the project, and be that complex and difficult to manage, using just vendors and not doing it in house.
You know how many times in my career I got into arguments with my business partner over a difference of opinion of how long the job should take to install?
How often? Daily?
Well, I'm sure all the time.
There was one time I threw an orange at him and missed and hit and splattered on the wall in the background. You bring up a really good point, and I know we want to get to the mailbox here, but it is important to design with installation in mind for many reasons. But the one that really just stands out to me is communicate with your team so that they know exactly what they're going to see on the job site, right? Like, to say it simply, like, you can easily design the way a sign should be installed to save hours out in the field. And I've been victim of just looking at a project saying, yeah, these letters should take 4 hours to put up on the wall. And then it ends up being a 2-day job because you didn't know what was behind the wall, or there may not even be anything behind the wall. I remember there was one time I had to lay plywood pine, like 3/4 inch pine behind, and basically 2 inches of foam. There was nothing else there. So there, survey, design, communicate with your team, make sure that your installers know what they're walking into, because they're going to look at you and say, I'm going to go work for another company that knows what the hell that they're doing, because this company does not.
Yeah, there's no better way and faster way to lose an installer than sending them out on a job site blind, not knowing what they're getting into. I mean, installers don't appreciate that. Don't do that to them.
Well, And as you're saying that, and Pete, it makes me it makes me question the order of operations again, because let's say you get yourself a designer who knows what they're doing. Let's say you get yourself a fabricator who knows what they're doing. You get yourself an installer who knows what they're doing. Nothing frustrates an ops team more than garbage information being chucked into the system by somebody who doesn't know their butt from a hole in the wall for
Shitty
you know
survey. Yeah.
yeah, or no survey. Oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this wall sign, and here's your Google Earth photo. That kind of stuff. You could lose a team really quick if you've got garbage inputs coming in there.
Now, wait a second. Hold on. Hold on.
You'll burn through vendors. You'll burn through designers. You'll burn through fabricators.
Jeff, are you saying that we
Yeah.
should not be doing surveys based off of Google Street View?
Oh dear God, no. Yeah. So yeah. You talk about a an install going sideways. You said a channel letter set we think's going to go quick. You think it's going to take 4 hours. I flashed you a job where we sent guys out. This is probably, God, 10 or 15 years ago. We sent guys out with a set of channel letters for an eyebrow level sign, right between first floor and second floor on a high rise office building, thinking that they were going to be in and out. And they start drilling, and they keep drilling, and they keep drilling. Turned out that the bottom floor, the concrete on that level was 18 inches thick. And nobody had been out and checked and done any due diligence. It was all done off of a photograph from the parking lot driving by at 45 miles an hour, and all that kind of crap, right?
Oh, you mean to tell me that you've never been a part of a story where the Google Street View is how the building looked maybe 4 months ago, and then when you
actually had one 3 weeks ago. I found out we had done a submittal on a project that I am managing right now. Now, I will admit the project started before I came on board, so I inherited this. But our initial submittals showed a wall sign. And so we're doing a monument, and the initial submittals, the rendering showing the monument in front of the building, used a Google Street View image. And that wall sign was taken down 2 years ago. And the only reason I know this is because the city came back to us and said, you need to put on your plans the distance between the monument sign and the wall sign. And so I went to the job site to go survey it, and sure enough, hey, there's no wall sign there.
Yep. I mean, listen, there are a lot of people that use Google Street View, but the point is get your ass off the chair, get your ass outside in your car, and start taking some measurements. Start getting into the nicks and crannies of what we do.
Nooks, but
so that nooks and crannies, nicks and crannies, nooks and
nooks.
Shut up.
Yes,
shut up.
It's nooks.
Whatever.
Well, you're right though. It's the you talk about the learning curve and the bumps and the things you need to be aware of. Again, going from the vinyl shop to that. You can put vinyl over a lot of things with little issues. Your site conditions don't impact you nearly as badly with a vinyl install. There's a lot. It's such a forgiving thing. Aluminum and acrylic are not. Steel is not. It only bends or flexes so much. You need to know your measurements have got to be much more accurate. There's you don't have bleed that you can trim away on a monument sign or a set of channel letters.
So let's sum this up. Let's sum up.
It reminds me of one of the threads that I saw on the sign forum the other day. It was like, how do I can't get the right angle that I need on Google Street View. How can I get a measurement on this? And somebody was like, get in your truck and take a fucking tape measure. Like, it's not hard.
All right, so let's sum this up. If you're a shop, small shop, 4 guys, 5 guys, whatever you want to call yourself, and you're a vinyl shop and you're getting into fabrication, there are steps to do that. It starts with people, right? Keep it. You're going to have a need to have what you called what rally meetings, or what did you call them? Kickoff meetings, something.
Kickoff meetings, KOMs.
Kickoff
Yep.
meetings. You're gonna need some kickoff meetings because communication is key. You're gonna need to design for fabrication. You're gonna need to design for installation. But ultimately, this all comes down to, it's not just getting into fabrication for the higher ticketed items. There's a world of processes, a world of best practices, a world of intricacies that you're going to get involved in. But there is a path to it. There is a path to taking a vinyl shop to a fab shop. And if you're interested, get yourself a consultant, get yourself a coach, ask some forums, ask some people in the Facebook group, in our Better Sign Shop group. There's a plug. But yeah, I think that was really good advice, and there are a lot of those shops out there. In fact, we've had two of our last few guests. Now, they made that change years ago, 10, 15 years ago, but that decision comes for every sign shop owner at some point or another. That decision comes. I had asked, I think it was Carrie, I asked when I said, do you ever regret it? Because there's more margins, there's more profit in vinyl. I have a client that does, $6 million in vinyl alone, $2 million in vinyl alone. Those are great margins. There you go, Bryant. Less headache, right? Do you ever wish that you could just go back to simple things? And, as much as life is simple, when you get into fab, the reason why you get into fab is because you hold the control, right? The more things that you can produce in your own house, the better, right? Now you can provide more solutions to your customers with confidence. You can be known for different things and get into different verticals. And that's the reason why most people would say, no, I think I would stay exactly where I am now. It was just a path of growth taking me from here. Things were easier, but now we're more involved in every aspect of the industry.
I was going to say, I would ask any one of these owners if they're having these thoughts. Number one, why do you think you want to do it? And number two, I think, and more importantly, being in the sign industry, since we're such a broad category, what kind of thing do you really ultimately want to get into? Do you want to be, are you just looking to serve the existing customers you have a little more of their business? Do you want to be that shop that can say, yeah, we can do a monument sign for you? Or are you looking to be, somebody who does, these huge high end projects? What's your end goal? What's your end goal?
No,
Don't
that's a good
get
point.
into it to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Assuming one of those 2 points are valid, right? You don't just get into fabrication just because. It's a monumental expense. There's a lot more liability. All of your overhead is going up. Your insurance goes up. Your workers' comp insurance goes up. I mean, there's a ton of things to consider on the business side of things when you're making this decision as well. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount of square footage demands goes up. Everything, yeah, your shop space becomes more precious. All that kind of fun stuff. Awesome.
Why don't you, hey Brian, why don't you kick us off in the right direction and open up that mailbox? Let's answer some of these questions.
Are we getting into the mailbox?
Yeah, I like it.
All right. So, I love this. Hey, Bryant, long-time listener. I feel like I need to do like Casey Kasem here or something.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
First-time caller.
The long-distance dedication here. How about an episode on safety protocols and procedures? Do we want to do a whole episode? I don't know. Maybe. We had an incident and learned a lot. When lawyers are involved, I'm not sure you could ever know enough. Do you have any sage advice for our first-time caller,
Yeah,
Mr. Viking?
so I was the safety officer in my former life. So, I mean, I guess, first things first, every company needs an injury, illness, and prevention plan. That's first and foremost basic safety 101 stuff that any insurance underwriter is going to want to see for your, going back to your comment, Pete, workers' comp. If you can show them you've got an IPP, guess what? Your workers' comp insurance rates are going to go down. So know that anything that you put in to safety is going to cost you something, but it'll have some potential savings to you in the long run as well. I guess the big thing, and you can go to any kind of seminars. There's all sorts of things that happen out there on the reg. Although I guess since COVID, I don't know how frequent they are. They may have all gone online, but there's training seminars on how to engage safety programs for your staff. The big thing is making sure that people participate and feel engaged by it, because the best program in the world that you write up and with all the good intentions of things that you want people to do as best practices in your office and your shop, if the guys on the shop floor don't care, if they think it's a joke, then they're not going to do it, and you've just wasted your time drafting a document that's going nowhere. So, yeah, get people involved. Do when you've got an event, use it as a learning opportunity. Talk to the team about what happened. Figure out ways. They'll know why
Absolutely.
that thing happened, and they'll know what corner they cut or what thing didn't happen, and somebody's going to point it out, and the team will talk about it. Let your staff drive that as much as possible, because they're the ones turning the wrench. They're the ones with the blades in their hands. They're the ones doing this. They know what's going to work and what's not, and keep them engaged in that process.
I'll give you a different perspective. You're absolutely right. I love having a plan in place that will save you money on your workers' comp policy, like you said. But some of that information, if you don't want to go that far, that's okay. That's okay to our listeners out there that are thinking like, oh shit, I don't have one of those. Like, don't relax. It's okay. But one thing that you did say, I want to emphasize a little bit. When something does happen, talk about it, discuss it. Put it in your employee handbook, if anywhere. Put it in your employee handbook how, like, this is not to be done like this ever again. I had an incident. I'll give you 2 instances. Very quick stories. I had a female vinyl production employee, very lovely lady named Lisa, and she essentially just dropped an X-Acto knife on her foot. These things roll off the table very easily, and just dropped it and stabbed her in the foot. Urgent care, bandages. She was out the next day. So, what do you learn from that? Well, we're no longer allowing open-toed shoes in our vinyl production area. Okay, you want to be in the office? That's fine. But if you're in the back room and you're wearing sandals or I don't know, whatever the heck these things, thongs, okay, you're gonna get hurt. So that immediately went into my handbook. Like, this is, if you're going to be in this area, this is what you're going to do. So that's a discussion. And then I make everybody sign off on the new policy, and it goes in their little file, and you're okay. There's something written, there's something agreed upon, and that's to prevent it from happening again. But then there are times that you cannot prevent damage. Like, it's around you, especially if you're in the world of install. It's around you everywhere. Gentleman named Mike used to work for me. He lived in my hometown, know him very well. And very simple 3-dimensional lettering install in a mall. So for those of us that know how to do work in malls, you know that you have to install these projects around mall hours. You're not allowed to do anything during mall hours, so it's before the mall opens or after the mall closes. We chose to do something before the mall opens, so that's a 5-6 a.m. install, and I sent Mike with another installer to a job. All that was needed was what do you call them? Two little giant ladders, and some hand tools. It wasn't really a big job. So if I gave you a dollar value, I think the job was probably close to about $4,000 in total value. 3-dimensional letters pin mounted into a wall, like hang a pattern, Very little installation work involved. If I could describe a very easy job, this would be it. But the mall just waxed the floor. So they had a video of a guy on a machine waxing the floor, right? We throw our little giant up on the ladder, and it's for those of us that are just listening to this, I'll describe it. Instead of the ladder being positioned as an A, you close the ladder and lean it up. He leaned it up against the wall. We even had somebody holding the bottom of the ladder, preventing it from kicking out. He asked the helper to go grab him another ladder. And as soon as he left the ladder slid out and he snapped his foot basically right off of his leg. Was no more than 2 feet off the ground. Was no more than 2 feet off the ground. This was not a bucket truck or an OSHA incident. This was the simplest job. Ambulance comes, takes him away. He tells me he's going to be out. They tell him, he's got 7 screws in his foot. This becomes a humongous workers' comp claim. But because I did everything because these were seasoned guys, and we had a helper there, we had everything set up correctly. There was nothing that we were negligent for. So the business was protected, and it ended up just going through the mall's insurance. But there are things that you cannot plan for. Do you think that I woke up that 8 o'clock in the morning phone call? It's still engraved in my head. Like, it's not something that anybody ever wants to wake up to, but things are going to happen. Things are going to happen in your shop, especially if you're in this industry. It's just bound to happen for you. So, whoever this person is that asked this question, for those of you that are concerned about how to prepare yourself for disaster, you can't. We've had several guests on here that have had fires in their shop. You can't prepare for that. I mean, you could try, but once that happens to you, it's just a learning moment. It's a teaching moment. What are you going to take from it, and how can you move forward? That's a significant, whatever it is, it's a significant punch in the face, punch in the jaw, but you have to get up and you got to keep marching forward.
I know a couple local business owners that did prepare for that. Like fire burning down their business. Like, actually might have prepared a little too well for that, with a nice insurance policy before the fire
that was a good first question. I enjoyed that question. That was a little
Pete,
that was a
I do
little
have
trip down
one thing
memory
that
lane for me, but that
I
was a
got
good
something I
first
got to
question.
throw on that though. Just going back to the training that I had there and doing IIPPs and what have you. They always talk about,
Yep.
so like there's tiers of planning that you can do when you're talking about safety training and to safety programs. And the first thing is the first goal is to eliminate the hazard, right? Then after that, it's control the hazard, and then after that, it's mitigate, right? So you're trying to, the first option is always okay. So go to your example about the girl with the X-Acto blade, landing on her foot. All right, so if you go to tier 1, the option is take the X-Acto blade out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe that's not an option working with vinyl, right? Okay, so fine, we can't go that route. So then you go the next level in, and you go, okay, well, what can we do to because it seems like the solution of the shoes is one portion of it, because you're reducing the risk of the contact with the blade. But what if you back it up and you look at, okay, maybe they can't just be sitting on the table. Maybe we've got to put some process in place where the blades have to be, when they're, in use, or when they're on the table, they've got to be stored in some sort of holder or something, so they can't roll off the table and land on somebody's foot. There's you can look at it from different angles, and if you take that approach, I think that helps kind of get you to more impactful policies and things like that with your staff.
So here's the thing, okay? It's very easy to just go to say what you said, but then you end up being that type of owner. And trust me, I was this type of owner, where it's like, I told you to put that knife in its stationary position, and now you're going in the
Sure.
back, and these things will annoy the shit out of you. Like, if you're really going to nickel and dime or really be a very detailed person, maybe that's you. When I say you, maybe that's our listener. Maybe that's the type of owner that they are. That was the type of owner I was, but it just led to a path of, not everybody has the brain power to remember all the
Sure.
things that I would enforce, right? So you're constantly in a state of I wouldn't say it's aggression, but you're in a state of disappointment constantly when you put a policy, something happens, and people just say, "Oh, that was just rare," and leaving an X-Acto blade on the table in such a way is normal behavior,
Sure.
but wearing open-toed shoes, that's not. So that was that was the easy answer for me, is just like, let's prevent the thing that I identified as not necessarily the cause of
Mhm.
it, but it contributed to the problem. If you had work boots on,
Mhm.
I would not
Mhm.
have lost you for a day, most likely. But I do hear your point. Like, yes, putting in those policies to kind of remove, prevent, and mitigate, like, that's a very good learning point for even me at that point. Yeah. But I just would go back to you and say, like, all right, if it's really something that small, you can end up being a real prick of a boss, like making sure all those little things are being done.
Example, probably not the best one, but yeah, I got you. Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah. That is exactly
The
counter
right
to my
mindset.
comment about trying to engage your staff and keep them going and engaged in a safety program. If you put too many rules in front of them, that's gonna absolutely shoot that in the foot. So no, I got you.
Yeah. But on the flip side, if it was discussed and that was agreed upon as a group,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a different
Yep.
story. Then it's just okay, everybody's on board for that.
What else you got?
All right. Next question. Michael, I'm going to let you pick this one, dude. Do you have the list
You
in
didn't know
front
there
of
was
you?
going to be a pop quiz, did you, Mike?
I don't.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I
I don't
didn't,
have
to
it
be
in front
honest
of
with
me
you.
either, so don't hit me with that
Yeah.
either. Don't slap me across the face with
You,
that question.
Yeah. It's in the Slack.
hang on. Let me find it. Hold on.
Slack? What's Slack? No, I'm just kidding.
It's Teams, only
But
better.
number 1 is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw teams.
God, I hated that, man. When we were on like COVID, all the kids were like, "Oh, Pop, I got to get on Teams for this meeting." And I'm a smart guy. I deal with software. Like, I've worked in software for damn near a decade now, and I could not
That's
figure
like
that
anything else,
program out.
Microsoft. They take some idea somebody else had and make it worse. There you go. There's your next cease and desist, right?
Yeah, either that or our next sponsor. Better Science Shop podcast bought by Microsoft next week. Shut these guys up. Mike, what do you got?
All right. How do you train your staff not to let customers run your business? This is a fast-paced industry for the most part, but I would like to know how to train in that area better.
How to train your staff to not let your customers run your business? Man, I don't think I've ever had a customer try to run my business. I welcome the addition.
I get the point though. When you sent this one to me, Bryant, it's funny. So there's a very one of the things that I'm still adjusting to in my new job is there's a definite culture shift for me in setting and maintaining a understanding of when we sell a job, we tell a client this job is going to take X number of weeks from the time that we get permits. Let's say that's the trigger we're going off of, right? And they're very willing as an organization to stick to those guns, 99 times out of 100. My prior employer and the culture at the prior company was very much anytime a customer squeaked, it was a question. You were 2 feet in the air already, trying to anticipate how quickly they needed something before they even told you how quickly they needed it. So it's a big culture shift for me, and that's the running. I think that's what the client's asking is, your customers will run your business for you by setting demands on when they need things, how they want things, those sorts of things. I think if I'm at least understanding what the person's asking, I would say, you number one, you've got to be able to have answers for your staff that they're comfortable with and able to back up with a client when they're presented with, those kinds of questions that could otherwise run your business for you.
Yeah, that's how I'm interpreting that question as well. Is a customer's opening a new business, and we hit on this a little bit earlier. I'm opening my new restaurant, and in 3 weeks, I need a channel letter signed, and I'm in a historic district, so it's going to require, you know, landmarks review and a variance, right? But you can pull that off. And this is something Bryant, we had Dylan Martin on a couple times as well, and he's talked about this quite a bit as well. And this is something that I learned, from him. But educating your customer up front and like you said, Jeff, just establishing realistic expectations goes a long way. And salespeople are terrified to do that. They're terrified to tell customers, no, I'm sorry, I know you need your sign in 3 weeks. Realistically, that's a 14 to 16 week turnaround time. Nobody wants to tell the customer that, right? And somebody out there is going to tell the customer, oh, sure, you need it in 3 weeks. Yeah, we'll make that happen. And that job is going to go sideways on them, and they're going to lose their ass on it, guaranteed. And then they're going to look like an idiot to the customer. So it's just really important to communicate clearly with the customer what the expectations should be right up front, and tell your staff has to understand that those expectations are there for a reason, and if you deviate from them, there's going to be hell to pay, basically, right? Like it's not going to go well for anybody. It has to be this. At security, they even went so far as creating like a timeline, almost like a Gantt chart type timeline that was given to the customer as a visual aid. Hey, this is how long. Yeah, it was great. It really was helpful because it broke down every stage of the process. This is how long you should expect design to take, 5 to 7 days. You should expect permitting to take 2 to 4 weeks. You should expect engineering to take 1 to 2 weeks. And it had 12, 14 different steps. I mean, they really got into the weeds on the detail on it. So the customer was really able to see, wow, holy shit, like what seems like a really simple sign in my mind that I like, sure, they can just hit print and it's going to pop out a set of channel letters for me. And then they just glue it to my wall. I'm like, sure, we're done. So for them to see that broken out and those steps was really powerful for them, really helpful. And not only did it help establish realistic expectations on timeline, but it also reinforced in them the value of that sign that they're paying for, how much work goes into getting that sign on their wall for them. That time equates to labor and materials and expenses. So it really showed them like, wow, I'm paying these guys a premium, and this is all the hoops they're going to jump through for me. I get it. Cool. I'm going to back off a little bit. It was a really, really powerful tool that I recommend every shop consider, creating, in some way, shape, or form for their clients, because it really helps just put a lot of those, timeline based objections to bed, just, without any opportunity for argument or, pushback at all.
Well,
I love that one, Mike.
what about this too as an option though? Just as taking it even a step backwards of that, teach your staff that it's okay to say no, and back them up if they do.
Totally. That's step one. And I think that's even more than teaching them that it's okay to say no. Having their back, like you said, backing them up when they say no, I think is even more powerful, because that sales rep is afraid to lose a sale, partly because they're afraid that they're not going to have money in their own pocket, but also because they don't want to disappoint the boss too. I mean, that's part of it. You don't want to don't want to lose sales and then have your numbers off, right? So knowing that the whole company has your back when you say, listen, your 3 week turnaround time is just not realistic. This is what's realistic. 14 weeks. That's what we can guarantee. Take it or leave it. Knowing that the company's got your back if you push back on that customer and say no, I think is really powerful. That empowering your employees to make those kind of business minded decisions is the greatest thing you can do as an owner.
Yeah. I'm gonna like jump in and go like the other direction with this. Like this is for like the owner operators. Like once you lay down these guidelines, like you've got to step out. Like you can't allow the back door because I've seen this happen firsthand of like hey like your team is communicating this like no we can't do it, and then like you've either got like a connection to that client because like they helped you grow your business, and then they come to you directly, and then you are just like you hey just get
Yeah,
weak in the knees for whatever reason,
I think that's
and
part of
it,
backing them up. I mean, I think that's like half of the
yeah,
backing them up equation is because when you do that, you're kneecapping your employee and you're basically undermining them and you're making them look like an idiot to that customer. And then that doesn't make your employee feel good at all.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing feels worse than you telling your customer one thing and then the boss overriding you, even though you thought the boss was going to have your back on that. Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point, Brian. Totally agree for sure.
Take off
Yeah,
the Superman cape if you're the owner.
yeah. I mean that this is one of those topics that has to start with the owner and work its way down. I mean, as the owner, you've got to stand by your guns and say, I'm not going to do that to my staff. I'm not going to meet your ridiculous deadline just because I'm desperate to make a sale and then just kill my staff for it because I'm not as the owner, like I'm not the one that's going to dealing with the shit to get this thing out the door on time. I might have to deal with the customer if they're pissed off if we're a couple days late, but my staff is the one that's got to stay late and work overtime and give up weekends and evenings to get this job done because I was afraid to lose a sale. Like that's shitty. So yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, the owner has to be the first in line to say no, but we can do this, and then stick to that 100%.
the shit slides downhill. I was just trying to channel like Matthew McConaughey or something. I don't know. I
Right.
haven't even finished this one beer, so
Oh, I'm almost a solid bottle of wine in at this point. You got to hurry up, man.
yeah, you just let me get my knife out. I'll just shotgun one. Um, do we want to stop there? If you guys want to answer one more, or what are we doing?
Let's do one more.
Let's do one more.
Two's too even of a number. We need a
Frank the
nice round
Tank
number
over
like
here,
three.
like old school. Lila's gonna have to rein him in. He's gonna be running out in the street.
We're going streaking in the quad.
All right. Hey, you pick it, Mr. One More. What do you got?
So there's a couple questions on here that two people asked kind of a similar question, which I think is kind of interesting. Let me see if I can summarize these. So basically, two people ask, how do you manage growth in terms of what processes need to change? When do you add equipment? It's interesting. It seems to be a really popular topic, and I think we've touched on that a little bit in the past as well. But let's circle back and kind of beat on it a little bit more. Jeff,
Yeah.
Viking, how do you manage growth? What's your like your best number one tip for managing growth in a
You
shop?
know,
I feel like this keys in with what we were originally talking about.
I'll be straight up with you. I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. I've been in two companies now that have gone through very rapid growth. Pete, you commented on this at the beginning when I was telling you what my current company's change is over a 5-year period. So I guess the question is, when you say manage, are we asking? Are you looking to control it, or are you looking to cope with it? What word of manage are we looking for here?
Well,
I'm going to read between the lines and assume that they kind of mean like avoiding growing out of control growth, right? Where you get too big too quick and you can't handle the workload you've got. You don't have the staff that you need to handle that work. Your vendors are letting, falling through the cracks and letting things slide. And we've all been there. I mean, being too busy is way worse than not being busy enough, I think. And because that's when you start disappointing employee or customers. And when you disappointing customers, I mean, that spreads like wildfire, and it's hard to stop that once it starts. So I'm assuming that's what both of these are kind of implying is
So
what's the secret to managing that growth in a way that's scalable without getting out of control too quickly.
great segue. I'm going to take it I'm going to take charge here. The way to manage growth is getting in at the ground level. Very simple. You need to understand what growth means to you. Okay. You're not going to go from a $500,000 shop to a $5 million shop overnight or even in a year. Okay. So what does growth look like? What are the steps of growth? That's where you're going to start. We're going to start by identifying with, we're here right now. In order to move to our next stage, and we identify what that is, there is a pathway to that. Now, most shop owners, I would say, I don't know exactly a percentage, but I would say a large chunk of them do not even know what growth is. They do the things. They grow too quickly. They go from doing 1 million and then overnight they're doing 5 million and they don't know how it happened. There's no thought process to growth. Growth is a stage. There are 5 or 6 stages to growth. Okay. In fact, I probably think that we did an episode on this just where we identified the typical stages of growth. And what is that? I mean, are you an owner right now that's involved in the business? Are you an owner right now that's the designer? Are you the owner right now that's the sign maker and installer? Well, if you are, then if you look at where you are right now and look at where you can end up, it's a business that runs itself and you just step away from it and manage it. Like there's no active role in it for you. But it doesn't happen like from A to Z. There's a lot of letters and steps in between to get there. So you have to map that out. That's where when I read this question, when I understand like how do you manage growth, you have to actually understand what phase of growth you are in order to manage it. Does that make sense to you all?
Mm-hmm. You need to know where you're going.
I love that.
Right? Too. You have to have a goal in mind and
What's
yeah,
end game?
exactly. Right. Are you looking to grow the business and sell it? Are you looking to like you said, get yourself, maybe you're the installer owner and you want to you just want to get yourself out of the bucket. I know a lot of guys have gone through that process, right? So yeah, what does it take to get there? Okay, well now I got to get another installer. I got to get another truck. I got to this sort of stuff. And you kind of map your way out of there. And then I think what you're trying to say, you need to track where you are on that growth process, and there's things you can do to pump the brakes along the way if you know where you are, right?
Oh, and I'm even gonna throw this at you guys. Growth is not measured by dollars. Growth is not measured by how much you're doing in sales. Whether you're a $6 million shop that does vinyl and fab, or if you're doing 2 million and you're just a wrap shop, growth is not measured in dollars. By the way I measure growth in the businesses that I own, I'd rather be $1 million shop making 20% than a $10 million shop making 5%. Now, if you want to go numbers wise, that's fine, but that's how I would look at it. I would look at it in percentages. I don't care for the gross dollar amount. I would look at percentage numbers and say, what is this is this good for me? Is this good for my life? Is this good for my family? But I measure success based off of, I guess you could say, if I'm going to look at numbers, it would be percentage points. That's one. And two, I look at it from just like life self-fulfillment. Are we learning every day? Are we being a good team every day? Are we educating ourselves, becoming better? Are we putting out superior work? Are we exceeding the customer's expectations? This goes back to my best philosophy here. If I'm checking those boxes, if I'm constantly educating myself, becoming better in this business on a day-by-day basis, if I'm exceeding the customer expectation and by putting out superior work and being active in a team-friendly environment, there's nothing else that matters. I don't care what your dollars that you're doing. I don't care what your processes are. And I don't care what your workflows are. Those are all minor things to improve upon. But if you're achieving those 4 key components in your business, it doesn't necessarily matter what business you're in. If you're doing those 4 things, you're achieving success, and success is like it runs parallel to growth. If you're successful, you're growing. Period.
Interesting.
I love these late night
Interesting
podcasts.
spin.
I told you guys were going to. I told you guys were going to get a very rare version of me this evening.
I like it.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's easy always just to think about the numbers aspect of it, from a revenue perspective when we're talking growth. It really is, but having to your point about running a $2 million business at 20% margin versus a $10 million business at 5%. I'm seeing that right now firsthand, just between the 2 companies that I've been with, and I can tell you that the low margin, high volume thing, hello burnout, so growth.
Oh yeah,
growth.
oh yeah. You're in that world of killing yourself. Yeah. You're clawing for every percentage point when you're doing things like that. 2 million. There was once a day, being a young new business owner, where I'm like, oh, I got to get to my first million. I got to get to my first million. And then after I get to my first million, I'm going to get to my first 2 million. And yeah,
doesn't
if
stop at all.
If you're
like it's just a treadmill, man.
All that means is $1 million worth of problems or $2 million worth of problems. If you're not improving your systems and your workflows inside your, Bryant and I, we call it an engine. Okay. We call it an engine. You're building. I often say it a lot to my clients, your biggest asset in your business is something that you can't even see. It's something that you can't even touch. It's a system. It's an engine that is comprised of many different workflows and processes and people and best practices and marketing automations and point of sale systems and things of that nature that are all in here that make your engine run when you are not behind the seat driving the vehicle. The engine is running when you're not there. That, to me, the measure of success, the ultimate measure of success and growth, is when you have this machine running and you're not driving the car. You have no active role in any of the major departments of this business. You're not a designer. You don't lead design. You're not in production. You're not managing you're not managing people. You're managing your business. I'd love to be sitting at a desk. This is what success looks like to me in terms of the growth scale. I'm sitting at a desk and I'm just watching people perform, and I'm able to coach when I see something that's done incorrectly. System runs, people are doing what they come to work to do, and I'm running my business. Do you know how many sign shop owners do not run their business? Thousands. To me, growth is when a sign shop owner can sit at a desk, watch everybody do their things flawlessly, and almost like a head coach. When a play is called, watch that play get executed. If that play is executed flawlessly, you're basically a cheerleader for your own business. When the play is run incorrectly, you're going to go to that position player and you're going to identify why that was done incorrectly and make sure that the next time that play is called, he knows, or he or she knows, what they are going to do the right way. And this is what I call like an engine. It's a system that if you're looking for as an exit strategy to sell your business one day or to exit out somehow, the people that make the most money in selling their business are the ones that you sold your business and you're not the key component to making it run. It runs on its own.
I think that I think the taking it back again though for a second, the knowing what your end goal is, I think is the starting point, right? Because not every business owner wants to sell or even may not even actually want to step back from things, right? There's some people that just trying to look at this from a different angle for a minute. There's some owners out there that want to be hands on for the rest of their lives. That's the fulfillment that they get out of it. I mean, I think I'm trying to remember who it was you guys were talking to. It was the design guy that does the rebranding and whatever. He still keeps a certain portion of design work that he does himself because that's a portion of the business that he knows he's good at, that he really
Dan
wants to be
Antonelli.
engaged in.
Yeah.
You know, that's his end game. Okay, so he grows the staff and whatever around him to support that goal. But so maybe he's not looking to sit at his desk and cheerlead necessarily. Maybe he wants to be the guy doing the design work or whatever. But so maybe for that guy it's okay. So you know what, I want to do this, but I'm going to inject myself into this for a second for a hypothetical. Let's say I decided I wanted to start my own business, which I don't, but that's another conversation. Let's say I did. My goal would be, all right, you know what? I want to do design work for the rest of my life. I want to design signs. I want to be Mike. I want to be the God dang it. What was it? What was the nickname
I
again?
love it.
The Magic Mike, the Corel
Magic
King. All
Mike.
right. So I
The-
decided
Magic Mike,
what is
the
it?
I want to
Corel
be Magic
King.
Mike, the Corel
There you
King
go.
version 2.0. And so, all right. So what does growth look like for me? Okay. So
Upgrade.
I'm going to need a salesperson. I'm going to need some way of building this stuff. I'm going to need somebody to handle the accounting for me or whatever, and I'm going to grow towards that. And so I can just sit back and do my design work and let the rest of the team handle it from there, right? But whatever it is, I've got to pick a goal and I've got to start working toward it, right?
So the only thing I would say to that is if you wanted to own a business and you wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be the designer, you just
Yeah.
bought yourself a
Yep.
job. That's all that you did. And this is not,
Sure.
there's no right or wrong answer to this, but the answer as to why somebody gets into this business is, I mean, if you ask 10 people, you'd
Mm-hmm.
probably get 10 different answers to that question. So there really isn't an argument here. It's just a matter of perspective. If you're going to be a business owner, then own your business. But if you're going to be a business owner because you like the craft and you're a great designer or a great sign maker, you bought yourself a job, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just no other way around that. You're not a business owner if you're you know what, this I'm going to say this a little differently. There's no way possible that you can be doing everything that a business owner would do if you
Mm-hmm.
have a key role in your business. If you are spending time designing 8 hours a day, there's not 8 hours that you're managing your business development, marketing analytics,
Sure.
coaching, leading, training. None of those aspects are being done, and that's what a business owner does. So I have a dozen clients, and they all have different viewpoints on this. There's no right or wrong way, but the only thing that I would say, to your point, is that if you get into this business it's like that technician mindset. You guys read the E-Myth method, right? So barbers don't necessarily make
Mm-hmm.
good barbershop owners
Yep.
because they cut
Yeah.
hair well, right? Beard trimmers don't become beard trimmer owners
Hey,
because they
I
trim beards well.
get careful there.
There's a reason.
This is oddly specific.
I was hoping somebody's going to pick up on it. No, like it's that technician mindset. So, you could be a great technician. That doesn't necessarily mean you should be an owner, right? You don't possess
Right.
the ownership mindset. So there's a lot of things to that I don't want to bore y'all with, but this essentially growth needs to be managed, and it's managed by knowing what stages you're in and identifying those stages for yourself. What is your own vision? Put it together. You start here. This is where you are right now. Where do I want to be 10 years from now? Okay. And then what are the steps in between to get there? So that to me is you have to understand what steps are, and then you can manage them your own way. Yeah, I don't. The mic is attached to a
Drop it.
boom, so
Yeah.
I couldn't like
There you go.
drop it.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
just pushing
yeah. No. That's all good.
Good stuff.
it.
Mike, do you have any rebuttals, any other thoughts on this topic before we close out the happy hour session?
No, I agree with both Jeff and Peter. I think that technically Peter is right to an extent. You know, if you're going to be a business owner, then there's certain things you have to do as part of being a business owner. But I think Jeff's right also that it depends on what your goals are and how you define that success and what you want out of your career and why you're starting that business in the first place. And not everybody starts a business because they want an exit plan from that business. Some people are the technicians and they just like making cool shit, like we've talked about a million times. And those people are definitely going to have different goals than the person who wants to cash out in 5 years or 10 years and is trying to build an asset. Regardless, neither one of those things is right or wrong. It just depends on what you want. So you have to, you've got to clearly define that before you can
Mhm.
control that growth. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that they're both right. You have to have a plan to achieve that goal. And if the plan is good, then the growth will you know, kind of fall in line with it. I mean, there's a
Work
million,
itself out.
right. I mean, there's a million tips we could give you on how to control the growth. The reality is, I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't have a plan, to get from point A to point B. And, you know, I think that's the hardest part is defining that plan and really defining what you want. For me, I'm 100% a technician, right? Like and it took me a long time to understand that. And I think I feel like I'm lucky that I was able to build a successful business and sell it and walk away from it and had processes and procedures and staff in place that allowed that business to operate without my hands and, pulling the strings. But in hindsight, the reality is like I hated the business side of it. Like it just wasn't me. I enjoyed making cool shit all day long.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I mean, you have to understand that. You've got to really dig deep and look introspectively and understand what it is that you want out of this, because ultimately, like it's your business, it's your career, it's your life path. Whatever you want is okay. You just have to be honest with yourself and define that before you go any further. And a lot of those remaining pieces of the puzzle will fall into place once you do. If you don't define it, like I didn't really define it. Like I wanted to believe that I was a business owner. Like I wanted to believe that was the mindset that I fell into, and that was who I was with the business owner. And I faked it for a long time, and I came out the other end successful, but it wasn't me. And I think if I was more honest with myself with what I truly wanted and not what I felt like I was supposed to be, and that's a technician and not the business owner mindset, I think I would have built a more successful business that I enjoyed running more. And maybe that business wouldn't have been as profitable or as worth as much, as on resale, but I might not have wanted to sell it had I built something that was really more in line with what I wanted. So, I think that first step is the most critical part of that conversation
Yep.
is,
Can we get this guy some Chardonnay on every podcast? Like, dude, I love when you
I'm
like
okay with
talk
that.
about this,
Yeah.
man. Like, hey, yeah, I've got one in the archive. Well, in the to-do list is like Mike's selling his business story that I want to do. I feel like we definitely need some Chardonnay for that. But yeah,
There's not enough
I
short
couldn't.
in the world, man.
I couldn't have said that one any better myself. Of like, you've got to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and what you want out of it. Like
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah, right. And like
that informs everything else.
take my current business right now, right? Like the business, my sign design business right now is literally worth nothing. Like it's not even worth one penny on paper. Nobody's ever going to buy this business. It's not an asset that I could sell. As Peter said, it's a job. I've got a job. I've created a business that is nothing more than a job for me. But this business right now that I'm doing gives me so much more happiness and fulfillment at the end of the day than having a sign shop full of employees that were building signs for me, because I wasn't making those signs. I was managing them. I was dealing with employees and their problems and their drama and vendors and customers. And I never got my hands dirty, the last few years of my shop ownership. So for me, my business, even though it's a job and not a true business that's sellable in 5 years or 10 years, that's my definition of success. I design cool shit all day long for fantastic customers that I
Mhm.
love dearly. And I might not ever be building an asset that I can sell and I can retire off of. And I might be doing this until the day I die at 90 years old, but it's cool. And that's what success is to me. So for me, controlling growth is simple as, no, I don't want to work for you. No, I don't want to take on that job because that doesn't look like fun. Nah, I'm going to be out of town for the next 2 weeks, so I'll get to you when I get back. I mean, that's controlling growth for the technician, right? It's totally different than controlling growth for the business owner. Neither is right or wrong, but you got to decide what you want.
So here's an interesting thought, though. I want to get your opinion on this. If we can, for a moment, for some of our listeners out there that are looking for more of a different type of answer, like growth comes in many different phases, and we've talked about like identifying what those phases are. But there's a lot of different things that happen in a sign shops or a wrap shops world, right? Like, when should you hire that salesperson? When should you hire your second designer on your team? When is it appropriate to buy that piece of equipment that's maybe getting us from a vinyl shop to a fab shop? And what is that piece of equipment? How much should you spend? Like those are different types of growth questions. Business, we kind of beat the drum on the business growth side of things, but business growth looks at numbers and percentages and the why. This is more tangible. So what do you guys think of that? Like, pick anyone, pick people, pick equipment. When would you say is it appropriate time to grow into making those types of investments?
I mean, are we talking about going to things like doing like cost benefit analysis type dive in? Is that the kind of thing you want to get into on the podcast? Because I don't feel like most of the sign shop owners and smaller shops and that sort of stuff are gonna want to dive deep into the weeds on that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed, but they definitely should. Agreed. The majority of them look at go to ISA and say, I asked all of my clients the same question on this week's calls. I
Hmm.
said, "How is ISA, and what did you come home with? Did you buy a fancy piece of equipment? Did you buy a new fancy tool?" And I remember a day. I remember my first CNC machine, and I was like,
Hmm.
"We're gonna take this business to the stratosphere," And you just start your creative genes just like they just bud instantly. Like, what can I build? I could get into furniture. I can get into cabinet
Hmm.
building. I could do almost anything with this damn machine, right? And it starts. Okay, do I want to get into that vertical? Do I? I have one customer right now, one client who's getting into casket wrapping.
Okay.
Dude, do not knock it. Do not knock it. I think it's a
I'm not knocking it.
I think it's a phenomenal idea, right? But at some point, that is something new for someone else to grow their business. So the question is like, I'm not, I don't want to harp on one specific one. Pick one and talk about it. Like, is it equipment? Like, when should you buy that next piece of equipment? How should you buy it? Brian, what about you? You kind of, I think I have an idea of how you would answer this. When it
I
comes to
wouldn't even
growth,
buy the equipment, dude. Like,
I'll
forget that.
stop it.
Yeah,
I'll stop it.
looking back at me, like I identify with both sides of this. Like Mike talks about the technician, like you're talking about the business owner. Like I sit like firmly just in the middle there of like I've got like the push and pull happening on all levels. So like the first CNC router we got, like I routed a movable table desk thing for the computer that was on the CNC router. Like I'm totally that guy of like, hey, let me figure out how this works and let me like build some cool shit out of it. But I also went to school for business and I like making money. So for me, it's like a total push and pull. And I think it's like for me, it all goes back to individually, like what you want out of it. Like I've lived that life. Like we're doing this now. I, like being in a sign shop. And even when I was at my previous company, I think that's how we're doing this, right? We're
Hmm.
not naming names. We're just saying previous companies. My favorite part of the job was talking shop with business like shop owners that knew exactly like the day-to-day grind of what the 60-hour work weeks were and commiserating in that, but also like, hey, let's talk and hey, like compare notes type of thing. And lo and behold, it took like 7, 10 years. That's We do this all the time now. I don't that's a shitty answer, I
Well,
think, but
It really is. It really was a shitty answer.
don't buy the equipment. Like, are you like when are you gonna buy the equipment? Are you outsourcing that particular stuff that you're gonna buy this equipment for now? I hope so. If you don't have the work, don't buy the equipment. That's
yeah, I think
Okay.
my answer is always on that one. Let your sales trends, what you're selling, is going to point you in a direction of what the things are where you need to build. If you start building up, backlog that you can't keep up with, then that's when you start looking at, okay, all right, you got two options: outsource or do it yourself, right? And if outsourcing is not an option, you want to control it, then that's when you're starting looking at your whether that's a hire or that's a piece of equipment or a bigger building or any of that stuff. It's all driven by the sales that you're getting are going to tell you what you need to do ultimately.
I'm gonna I'm gonna come back and say like if you want it, you can afford it, buy it. Like it goes back, yeah, like it goes back to the technician mindset. Like hey, if you like having those toys, certainly like if that gives you fulfillment, do it. Like I'll give you a specific example. Like when we started doing the podcast, we did one episode where we talked about outsourcing pretty hardcore, and then like 2 episodes later, we talked about it could have been growth and like buying equipment. And I had a gentleman email me, and he picked out like one sentence from something that Mike said, and he said, "If you're gonna buy a flatbed printer, you have to buy a cutter." And then he based his whole I don't know if he based his whole financial decision on that, but that was what he was using as the justification for his purchase was like like these guys said, if I buy a flatbed printer, I have to have the cutter. And to me, it was just like, okay, like he made up his mind that he wanted this previously, and now like we're looking for some way to rationalize that decision.
Yeah, I mean, you can do all the cost benefit analyses you can come up with and ROI analyses and the whole 9 yards and probably put a number on where that break even point is where okay, I'm outsourcing X amount of dollars of this. But I mean, I think there's a gut instinct that comes into play with that as well a little bit that I don't think anybody really wants to admit is there. But if I have this piece of equipment, I'm going to be able to expand into a few more markets and I'm going to land this customer and this customer. And right now I can't get into this market because I'm outsourcing this. But like for me, like when I bought my first flatbed, it was because I was outsourcing more in a year than what it would cost me to buy a flatbed printer and have it in house, right? And that's all I thought about. Like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I spent 150 grand with Science 365 this year. Yeah, it's time to buy a flatbed and do this in house. But yeah, like Brian said, like flatbed, there's a cutter, there's a person to operate it. The thing I didn't take into consideration is the thing runs so damn fast that it almost takes two people. It requires more staff than what I had before. So there's a lot to it that you can't really even begin to predict. I mean, I don't know, and it's a bad answer it's a shitty answer like Bryant gave. I think like you got to trust your gut too. And like,
Is it
It's
the
damn late.
hour of the day, or is it just
I
shitty
love the
answers?
thought of ending a
It's so
podcast
late.
with just
Forget it.
really
Bit of
shitty
both.
answers to a question there. That's come back for our next episode and hear more sage advice like this.
take out
what
a
we're-
second mortgage on your house and buy a flatbed printer tomorrow.
What we're gonna do with
That's not
this
your
one,
idea.
we're gonna break it into 2 parts, and like it'll be cut like exactly halfway between. It'll be like an episode of Batman where it's like, come back next week, and then boom, that's it.
Part 1, Bryant and Michael are sober, and part 2, Bryant and Mike are
That's
plastered.
awesome.
Did we answer that question at all? Like
I
that person is going to
know.
go out of business next week because of our advice. I feel like we've really let that person down.
We got started on the philosophical aspect, and I just can't let it go at this point in the day. I've had like 8 meetings before this one.
Hey,
so
I did a therapy
T-ball
session before
thing.
this
I did
call,
dance
so
class.
I'll see that and raise you.
There we go.
Man, see, I just came back from vacation, so I'm still on like island time, and I feel like that's a shitty excuse compared to you two.
It's
I like
a
it.
good excuse. I mean,
Pete, what's your excuse?
His wife's in the other room
It's
waiting to
his wife's
celebrate her birthday.
and he's
Throwing shit at him.
still sitting there.
My wife is now in bed, gentlemen. I've spent nearly 2 hours with you folks.
Sorry.
My wife's in bed.
I think
It's
you
fun.
said that wrong. He
I
probably
was
meant
going to
you
say that's not how you
fucks,
pronounce
not
that word.
you folks.
Sorry, Peter.
It is what it is. I love talking with you guys.
You
But,
love us.
but I am going to jump. So this was good catching up with y'all. And I had a good time. This was a good episode. I hope our listeners learned a little bit something. And Jeff, always great seeing you, man. Thank you so much for jumping on here with
Thanks
us.
for having me.
Appreciate it.
Pete, tell your wife I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what she's going to say to you when you crawl into bed. Hey, babe, I'm finally done. Mm-hmm.
That's probably accurate. That is very, very accurate.
I only say it because I'm going to get the same thing when I crawl back.
Yeah, she's gonna say, "Who's the fucking schmuck that decided that 8:15 to 10:15 is gonna be a good idea?"
Dude, when you have a chance with the
Just blame
signed
it at me
Viking,
again. All right.
you take it.
Sorry, Peter. I
Yeah.
owe you an apology.
Yeah.
Tell your wife to sign Viking says he's sorry.
At,
I'm sure that'll go a long way for you. See ya.
all right, guys.
Shall we? Do we
ruined the marriage.
Do we have rapid fire takeaways for the? I mean, it's like 2 hours in, almost. I love that these always go long, and that we're always like, just one more, and then that was 45 minutes ago that Mike said just one more, just to put it in context for the listeners, if they are still listening.
Honestly, like if our listeners hang in there with us, like God love
This is
them.
gonna have to be a 2-parter, I think.
I don't know. Like I feel like this is an interesting, like sober to a bottle of wine in, case study.
I think we should do more of
I'm
these.
definitely jealous with you on that front, Mike. I will say I'm 100% jealous with you on that front. I should have brought the bottle of scotch when I had the window.
Man, we got to do happy hour more often. This is fun.
I do like this
For
format,
sure.
yeah. Next time we'll actually have more people drinking, but
yeah, Peter didn't like it.
so Bristol, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was more just. I think that was just more of a timing
That was a
thing.
circumstance, like. Yeah. All right, so
rapid fire takeaways.
do we have any
rapid fire takeaways?
Rapid fire. We got to stick to it, even though, I feel like we've already given all the takeaways. Mike,
I'll give you. One.
Okay, all right. The signed Viking.
Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think the big one for me is, no, if you're an owner or manager or whoever you are in this industry, know what you want out of it and work towards that. Just keep that goal in mind, no matter what you're doing. If you're a technician, if you're an owner, if you're a manager, if you're a project manager, if you're a sign installer, whatever it is, you got a job. You're in a really interesting and diverse industry. we really do something kind of special. I don't think you guys have focused on that a little bit in the last few casts that I've listened to, and I just want to echo that. There's a reason we all stick in it the way we do. It's a very, very special opportunity to do what we do and figure out what it is specifically that you want to do in that and contribute to that, and just go for that. However you get there, it's a path, it's a journey, but keep the goal in mind, and just work towards that every day.
I'm going to jump right on
Yeah.
that and say the exact same thing. Rapid fire takeaways. Now, I was talking with a guy that I was hoping to maybe get on the podcast earlier this week, and he is like doing a lot of boutique type stuff. And his mentor has been this 80-year-old guy that like still bending neon, owns a successful sign shop, but he is still bending neon. And he's like the gentleman I was talking to asked like, "Hey, when are you going to retire?" And he's like, "Why would I retire? This is what I love doing." So, there's different strokes for different folks to like tie. I feel like we have to have like the pop culture references, but
What you're talking about,
yes.
Willis?
Perfect timing. But that's it, again, that is like the biggest takeaway from this one. Like, know what you want out of this, pursue that. And Mike, like, well, my biggest takeaway is every podcast, Mike needs to drink a bottle of wine first, or during.
I can do that. I'm happy to do that.
I don't.
Consider it done.
The good news is I don't think that will result in a workers' comp claim for me, because technically none of you, like, we're all independent contractors here, but I don't know. I don't know if that's a good.
It's guaranteed to result in like a real cease and desist letter at some point, though. I mean,
Yeah.
just be forewarned.
That'll be how they
no,
do
I'm
a
gonna-
podcast episode. Like, hey, just drink a bottle of wine, start recording conversations with your friends. Be fine.
Yeah. I'm sure I think that's how most podcasts are put together, actually, to be honest. I don't. No, I'm going to agree with both of you guys. I think all the topics that we discussed today, I think that's kind of a common thread between them is define what you want and, come up with a plan to get there. And don't let Peter or anybody else tell you that
it's easy to
not
say
okay
that
to
when
be
he's
a
not here.
technician. It is. That's why I said it. Now, it's okay not to be the business owner mindset. It's okay to be a technician, and that is something that I struggled with a lot for a long time. Hustle porn, and you work 24/7, and that is a mentality that's pervasive, I think, in the business owner community, and it's really unhealthy, and it's not necessarily what everybody wants and what everybody becomes a business owner for. And I would bet money that probably everybody listening to this has fallen victim to that at one point in time or another. And some people, that's what they're put on this earth to do. And that's fine. That's totally fine. But the rest of us, we are technicians, and we get the fulfillment out of making the cool shit and not running the business. And that's okay. And society and that whole hustle porn culture wants to tell you that that's not okay, and that's bullshit. It's totally fine to be a technician who wants to make cool shit all day long every day. Some of the most successful people that I know are technicians. I know a guy works by himself, has one bucket truck. He just is a installer for other sign companies. He just is I'll install channel or something. Dude makes 300 grand a year, has a house in Florida, is happier than a pig in shit. And he is there. You'll never find anybody who fits the mold of a technician more than this guy. And he's probably making more money than all of us. And he's happier than all of us. So if that's what you want, that's fine. I think that's my biggest takeaway, is just figure out what it is that you really want. You want, not what society tells you want, not what the business community tells you want, or your networking group or whatever. What you want, and then formulate a plan to achieve that, and stick to that plan, and you'll get there. I mean, I think everybody who has done that and realized that plan will tell you that the grass is greener, over here. I definitely can tell you that. I've been on both sides of that fence, and I love my life. And I didn't love it before when I was trying to become a business owner. So
Who is this guy?
figure it out.
Who is this
I'll
guy?
send.
He's
I'll send
magic.
everybody a bill.
You're supposed to be like the crusty
He
one.
is Magic Mike,
Magic
the
Mike.
Corel King.
This this sign shop owner whisperer.
Wait till
here.
you get me started on talking about Corel Draw.
Oh,
You know,
that's a nasty episode in and of itself. All right.
we definitely need to get
Yep.
the Shermanator.
Oh
back
yeah,
on that one.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk some on that.
Well, Jeff, before I launch into the crazy spiel at the end that I
Yeah.
always forget, pleasure to have you, man. Always fun
Thanks,
to
guys.
catch up. I'm glad that we decided to start
Yeah.
recording these.
Agreed.
Hopefully, there's some nuggets of wisdom for everybody.
I hope you're able to turn this into something useful or usable. That's the word. There it is. See, good luck wrangling
He's
that
not even
sentence
been
into
drinking.
something in the podcast. And I haven't been drinking.
All right.
I am sober.
This is descended in utter chaos. No, I think this is our best episode ever, honestly. Like, this is a great format. I think we should do this again. And I really hope that Jeff comes back on a regular basis because this is a lot of fun. Jeff, thank you so much. I mean, you know that we love you like a brother, and you're always welcome here. So we
This
really appreciate
recording
you
is going to be
doing this.
done in like 15 minutes. I'm going to send it to you at like 3 a.m. so you can listen to it in the morning and let me know what you think. This is the new format for the podcast.
Thanks, guys.
No. Okay. All right.
Maybe not.
No, this is a great format. Good time. All right. I'm gonna bring this one home. If you are looking for a new partner for large format and wide format and super wide format and ultra wide format, call our friend TJ at GCI Digital. They will take care of you. They do customer service just the way that Mother used to make it. And we had them on the podcast like 9-10 episodes ago. Go back and listen to it. You can get a feel for how they do business. It is very much a old school way to do business in a increasingly modern age. How was that? That was solid.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. TJ rocks. Yeah. He's old school. Check out that Rusty Bus.
Love it.
Yeah. I'll tease something here. I think we've got something in the works that should be really interesting soon-ish with TJ. Maybe just to encourage him a little bit as well. But nevertheless, if you are interested in being a guest, you know somebody who should be a guest on the podcast, make sure you reach out to us. It is hey@bettersignshop.com. We stopped putting that email address on the YouTube episodes and the Spotify episodes because we got a lot of spam. But if you're a real person, send us an email. That's it. All right, guys. All right.
If you liked this episode, make sure you hit subscribe to get all the latest episodes and check out our website, bettersignshop.com. Get free resources and helpful tools on growing your shop. Thanks for listening.